Evan Mobley is 21 years old. Last year, he was the 3rd overall pick in that 2021 NBA draft class that saw a lot of promising talent come into the league. After being the favorite to win Rookie of the Year for most of the year, he ends up finishing runner-up and helps the Cavs truly overachieve in a season where no one really thought they were going anywhere. We've heard some absolutely ridiculous comparisons. Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and I get it. The comparisons are only ridiculous until guys develop into true star players, and then they don't seem so outlandish after all. Of course, Evan Mobley has to take those next steps in order to get in that conversation with all-time great players like these, but after seeing this guy play for 1 year, there are some signs that we can point to that may give us decent reason to believe this guy could be a true star in the NBA. Now, the Cavs have picked in the top 5 in the NBA draft very frequently over the last several years, going back really to LeBron James in 2003. Out of those top guys, we can see some hits and some misses. Total opposite ends of the spectrum when you just think about guys like LeBron James and Anthony Bennett. In this video, we will assess the credibility of these comparisons with a deep dive into the player that Evan Mobley is now and could possibly be, and also take a look at the ends of the spectrum of which Evan Mobley's career will play out, the floor and the ceiling. The Cavs have a 3-year window of contention from this upcoming 2022-23 season up until the 2024-25 season with their core 4 under contract. We assumed that Evan Mobley would get extended in 2025, but there is always the possibility that in that offseason, Donovan Mitchell could opt out of his contract. 3 players on this roster made the All-Star team last season, and Mobley wasn't even one of them. It's hard to think of a better number 4 in the league right now. This opportunity is not one that comes often for highly promising youngsters like Mobley. It makes it fairly difficult to make comparisons to guys when they were in their early years in the league, like similar prospects, think Anthony Davis or Giannis, and how they started out with just very little in the way of support players. So with that in mind, let's get into the traits that make Evan Mobley such an intriguing young talent. First things first, we just have to start out with the raw athletic traits that Mobley possesses. This guy is a real 7-footer with tremendous wingspan and foot speed. Of course, what drew so much attention to him initially after coming into the league was the defensive talent. From the get-go, as soon as he started playing games, lateral movement ability and rotation speed for a guy of his size is just not something that's supposed to happen. His length and wingspan allows for his area of contest to be so wide that even when it seems like an offensive player has a few feet of space from him, his ability to cover that ground during a contest is incredible, and to do so without fouling, even more impressive. This is an advantage and a trait that's so rare in young big men that want to block every shot. Take a look at Jaren Jackson Jr. over in Memphis, who I would call a very similar defensive player in his ability to switch on to smaller guys and swallow up shots in the paint, but he's just too jumpy, and his desire to reject any and every shot that enters the lane sometimes gets the better of him. Mobley is already one of the elite defenders in the league and should only get better, and could honestly be the best defensive player in the league in a couple years. The next thing I have to highlight is a level of IQ for a rookie on both sides of the ball. Once again, the way this guy operates within the team concept, on offense, on defense, talking about knowing where to go, what to do, when to pass, when not to shoot, and when to shoot, is another reason why he's so highly touted and has drawn some of these comparisons. We just don't see guys come into the league and look like true veterans from day one. Now, I will say, knowing how to play within the offense, I do think has to be attributed in a lot of ways to Darius Garland's presence on the court. Because Mobley gets to play with a point guard that is such a maestro in running that pick and roll and getting his guys the ball, Mobley is definitely someone that benefits greatly from Garland's presence. Still, bottom line, Evan Mobley has shown that he is a great team player, and it doesn't seem like there's anything in the way of an ego or just a desire to be highly involved as a shot taker within the offense. The last thing I do want to point to is the upside as far as playmaking goes. Mobley has displayed some really good handling abilities, being able to push the ball in transition and also create off the dribble in the half court against slower bigs when he has an isolation situation. And if he can maneuver himself close enough, he's really good with a nearly unblockable post hook shot. Now let's move on to weaknesses, and this is where things should get really interesting, because if he doesn't improve on some of these weaknesses, we are just not going to see this level of Hall of Fame talent come into fruition. First and foremost has to be jump shooting. Mobley only made 23 3-pointers last season, and even worse, in his last 48 games, he only made 9 threes. That was less than 1 every 5 games at a 25% clip for the season. As far as mid-range shooting goes, he did demonstrate an ability to make certain mid-range shots on a relatively low volume, but outside of that 15 feet area, he was pretty shaky. A lot of these looks were created from Darius Garland, running him in that pick and pop, getting him the ball in a nice spot from a free throw line area. And that's good if they can establish that, but in order for him to really use this mid-range game, it's a thing that he will have to be able to use in a variety of ways. I would really like to see him establish a face-up game. Being as tall as he is, if he can turn around and shoot over a defender, that could be very difficult to stop. It's also worth noting that Mobley had some of his worst scoring games when Darius Garland was out, which makes a lot of sense because he does score a lot of his points from Darius Garland. And some of those games were against weak teams too, that he really should have been dominating against. Now, this is not me trying to hold him accountable for anything, because I know he was a rookie, and it's okay. Everybody has growing pains. You can't be great every night. Even if you are an all-time great, you will have some of those shaky games in the beginning, but that's not the point. We just haven't seen him establish himself as a go-to player yet. It's really been as a role guy within the system of an offense. And the last thing I will say about his shooting range is that this could be a huge red flag when he's playing minutes at the power forward position, sharing the floor with Jared Allen, another guy that just can't space the floor at all. Alright, we're going to get into certainties and uncertainties here. And one of the main things we can note about Evan Mobley after watching him in his rookie year is that he doesn't need the ball in his hands or a ton of ISO touches to be effective in an offense, in a game, necessarily. Him being able to play his role will allow Darius Garland and Spida Mitchell to dominate the ball. Now, this could be a gift and a curse. His guards will love playing with him because he will set screens and go to the right position. He will give them the ball when they want the ball and make sure they get their shots. But him deferring to them may not be in the team's best interest at times as they face tougher challenges in the NBA playoffs. They might need him to go get a bucket and establish himself and really make the defense guard him. We know he will be used as a screener, roller, popper on offense, and those 10 to 16 foot jumpers, as I was talking about before, they will be harder to get to in playoff scenarios. A defense will game plan against that, make him kill them from other ranges, other facets of shot creation. Even if he can expand his range a little bit to 18 feet, that would do wonders in games, especially like I said before, if he has to share the floor with Jared Allen a lot, and we anticipate that will be the case, it's going to be crucial that he can hit those deeper shots. Now, of course, we have generally seen Mobley play in a certain role, and there is still a lot we don't know about him as a player. For example, can he handle a higher usage? Not that it's necessarily going to be something he needs to do during the year unless injuries really arise. Certainly Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell will be the guys with the high usage, and Mobley will not need to be a high usage player. But that being said, if he can handle that burden, that is a step that he can take to get his name in those conversations, all-star teams, all NBA teams. Another question I have is, how does he establish himself as a fixture or a centerpiece in the Cavs offense with Mitchell, with Darius Garland? If he's going to be that guy, Kevin Garnett, Tim Duncan, whatever, where is his wheelhouse? If you're going to play through him, where are you playing through on the court? Because with Tim Duncan, we're talking generally low post play. Giannis's wheelhouse, generally dribble penetration from the three-point line. And Anthony Davis, face up from the mid post, high post, catch the ball off a pick and fade and create from there. I don't think Evan Mobley has necessarily found where he likes to create his shots from or generate offense from. Where does he like the ball the most? I don't think we know the answer to that question yet. And if he can establish a comfort area, this is how he can begin to really establish himself as an offensive centerpiece on the team. Here's another question. When the Cavs generate a switch, will they look for him in the post? Or will we get Darius Garland or Spida Mitchell isoing on a big man usually? I think I have an idea which answer is probably going to be the most likely going into this next year. I don't know if Evan Mobley's ever going to really demand the ball, if he's really going to get on those guys to give him the ball in a situation like that. Now, the last question I have here, can Mobley add both weight and shooting range at the same time? Sometimes becoming jacked caps your ability to consistently knock down perimeter shots. And it does feel inevitable that Mobley will add weight over the next few years. We've seen these young guys come into the league looking super thin. I mean, obviously we can understand Giannis's transformation. Even a guy like Anthony Davis has really bulked up and added a jump shot. So I think it can be done, but Can he find a really good balance where he can add both of those things to a point where they truly benefit his game? The best balance he can find. So I do want to talk about these comps a little bit. We've heard the Tim Duncan comp. I think this has to do a lot with basketball IQ and mentality more than anything else. Tim Duncan is just a bigger guy. I think even when Evan Mobley fills out, he's not necessarily going to be as big as Tim Duncan from a weight perspective. Tim Duncan would be a center exclusively today in today's NBA. And if Mobley fills out, he will be strong enough to be your prototypical center. I think it will be really interesting to see with this Cavs team, do they eventually decide that the best route to go forward with is to get rid of Jarrett Allen and have Evan Mobley be the starting center instead? I definitely feel like if Evan Mobley doesn't become a great shooter, that could be a very possible avenue for them to explore. As far as the Giannis comp goes, Evan Mobley has demonstrated a lot of defensive versatility, probably even more switchability than Giannis, and also ball handling skills for a guy of his height, but there's just no way he can be Giannis. Lack of off dribble explosion is night and day. This is how Giannis gets all his points even without a very consistent jump shot. Not only the fact that he's super strong, it's the level of athletic ability. That explosion, no one can stay in front of him. As far as Anthony Davis, I do think this comp is a lot better. I mean, first of all, from the fact that he has played the 4 on a championship team, and that he came into the league not with a necessarily great mid-range game and one that he had to develop, which, to be fair, has been inconsistent through his career, especially as he veers further away from the rim. But that being said, we have seen AD be just absolutely lights out as a mid-range shooter. And of course, defensive ability, not just switchability, but interior strength, contesting shots, and being that defensive player of the year level defensive player inside. When it comes to protecting the rim, he can be that. And lastly, the Kevin Garnett comp. As far as body type, you can definitely see it. But when it comes to jump shooting, Kevin Garnett coming into the league was an electric mid-range shooter. It's just Mobley is so far behind him in that area. It's not like there isn't hope for him to develop that mid-range shot into a really reliable weapon. We do have some examples of mid-range marksmen that weren't good shooters as rookies. LaMarcus Aldridge, for example, Chris Bosh, as I said before, Anthony Davis, guys that had to hone in and develop that part of their craft in order to make it a focal point for them. What it comes down to. Now, I haven't talked about durability at all in this video, and the reason why is because I think it's unfair. Like, obviously, if a player has a lot of injuries, they're not going to hit their ceiling, and it's because of injuries. But let's just assume that Evan Mobley has a generally healthy career. In this case, it will come down to his work ethic, his love of the game, love of the grind. Is he working harder and especially working smarter? Can he shoot? This is the most important thing. I've stressed it the entire video, the jump shot is the key. It is what unlocks Evan Mobley. We know his defense is going to be there. Even if he doesn't improve at all on defense, which is not going to happen, but even if he didn't improve at all on defense, he's still an elite defender. If he becomes a great jump shooter and stays healthy, he can reach all-time great levels. It will help his slashing guards tremendously if he can space out the defense, especially at that 4 position. You can't win a championship if he does not improve in the jump shot area. You can't. So in conclusion, Evan Mobley's floor, I'm not talking about necessarily and exactly how he plays, but for the type of player he is and how good he is, his floor, I believe, is like current Bam Adebayo. Now, I know they're not exactly the same in the shot blocking category, but they are both incredibly switchable defensive players that can guard any and everything on a basketball court with just inconsistent mid-range games, a little bit of playmaking and handling. I know their body types are different. They're good role guys on offense. If he can't get that jump shot to a consistent level, he should be like what Bam Adebayo is right now. That's still an all-star level player, but not necessarily reaching what you hope he would. Now for the ceiling, I'm thinking like bubble Anthony Davis. And him and Anthony Davis don't necessarily have the same scoring traits. I'm not looking for Evan Mobley to go out and score 30 points a game, 26 points a game, or whatever. Because your scoring skill, despite what a lot of you guys might think, it's not measured by your points per game. There's a lot of guys that can get their shots wherever they want it, but they don't need to get their shots every time. And that's for the benefit of the team. Being a true team player is more valuable than a points per game average. Being able to get those shots is the key. If he improves his jump shot, he can be an Anthony Davis level player. Obviously a generational defensive player, but being able to space the floor and be automatic from 18 feet or so, space the floor even to the 3-point line, and that right there is a top 5 to top 10 player in the league. Anthony Davis in the bubble, he was probably cracking that top 5 players in the league. So there you go. I'm not going to say he's going to be Giannis level. He should be a better shooter than Giannis, but just being able to create points off the dribble is not something that I necessarily see at that level or really even close to it, because I think he should be doing more damage in the mid-range. Of course, how his teams decide to utilize him is incredibly crucial, and the teams that he ends up playing on. If he's going to be playing on a team with ball-dominant guards his entire career, I mean, we're just going to have to wait and see. But at this point, he can make himself incredibly serviceable to his team by adding that shooting range, get out to 20 feet at least in the next few years when they have this championship window in Cleveland.